Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thinnest Veil podcast. I am your host, Dr. Melissa Bird, and I am super excited to have Safrianna back with us today. Hi.
Hello. So glad as always to be here.
So happy to have you. So before we started recording, I said, so we're going to be talking about spiritual bypassing and
And
whether or not there's one white way to be spiritual, which I was trying to say for all of you listening, one right way. Like that there's all these rules about being spiritual, but the Freudian slip about the one white way.
it's perfect for this topic because spiritual bypassing is totally a thing that I see predominantly being done by white women.
Hmm.
No surprise, unfortunately. I,
Yeah, you
I
want
I
to?
say as a white woman, like, look, I'm with y'all, but we can do better.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like your
Absolutely.
experience with in this realm of spirituality, what are the things that you notice that we've got to pay attention to?
Well, I want to just tell a story about a spiritual leader that I had really respected until I realized she was spiritually bypassing. Just to give an example of kind of what it can look like.
Hmm.
So, this person taught witchcraft and Wicca and Norse stuff and like kind of a grab bag of a lot of different pagan things. And I will never forget. She was literally teaching in front of a group, and she said, when I have issues come up, when I have shadow things that come up, those uncomfortable things that they're not for me, I just shapeshift them away.
Whoa. Whoa.
And I was like, wait, what? You what? Excuse me? And she goes on to explain, oh, I see I don't want to look at that. So I just transform it into like an animal and then I let it run away. And I'm like, uh, what? Like my whole nervous system was just on fire with, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I've heard some other people be like, oh, well, that could be a really adaptive way to do shadow. No, no. When we're like straight up, I'm not going to look at this uncomfortable thing, that's bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is using a spiritual excuse for why we don't need to look at something
Yep.
or a spiritual tool to pretend that thing no longer exists or doesn't impact us or doesn't matter, right? Spiritual bypassing can be saying, oh, I'm turning it over to God. I'm just going to turn it
Mhm.
over to God. I'm just going to turn it over to God. I'm not going to look at it myself. I'm just going to turn it over to God. And so these sorts of, I don't need to look at it. I'm going to hand it over to a higher power or to another entity or to another person. I don't have to do anything with it, is bypassing. And then when you layer that spiritual component in, it is now spiritual bypassing.
This brings up for me when I very first started doing super transformational um spiritual work was in 2011. I'd been going through a really difficult divorce with my ex-wife, and I had joined this really lovely group which did a lot. It did a lot. But one of the tools that they gave us was to take our good girl and like move her off to the side basically and give her a job. So for some time I was taking the little me who wanted me to be good and to shut my mouth and to stop being in everybody's face, like this
Mm-hmm.
younger version of me. And I used to put her in the corner with the coloring book and something to read and, like visualize putting her to give her a project basically so
Sure.
that I could move forward. And what I came to realize, she just got bigger and louder and more, obnoxious. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because I was not nurturing her. Like what
Right.
she wanted was to be held and loved and connected to in a way that she could finally feel seen and heard and not be so afraid, like
Mm-hmm.
when we're younger. And when we shove down that internal voice, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And it's because I really love what you said about here's another favorite phrase, let go and let God.
Mhm.
Yes, I can totally let go and let God.
Yeah.
Like, "Yo, help me out." And
Yeah.
also we still have to do the healing work in our current time. Like, we have to
Yes.
do that.
We have to. Oh my gosh, my brain's going in so many different directions right now because there's so much to this. Um yeah, we have to at least be willing to look. This parts thing, I just want to speak a little bit on functional dissociation
Okay, great.
because this is really important. Most of us dissociate things. So you're driving down the street and someone rear ends you at a stoplight,
Yeah,
and you have all this, I'm on my way to this thing and now I'm gonna be late, like you're angry, right? But then you're like, wait a minute, I need to go check on the person behind me, make sure they're okay. I need to dissociate the anger temporarily and put it over here. That angry part of me needs to go over there so that I can handle the situation.
right,
That's functional dissociation.
right,
So you putting that part of you in the corner with a coloring book is fine for a day. It's fine, maybe even for a week, if there's this agreement in there. You know what, honey? I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you the love and attention you
right,
need. But right now, I need you to go over there and color in the coloring book because we're not going to do the good girl thing in this situation.
right,
So I'll come work with you later. Unfortunately, most of us dissociate and we just push down and we push away, and that can get into that bypassing pattern. So making the space for us to return to these experiences. It does not have to be right when it happens. It doesn't have to even be the same week it happens, but we need to circle back around to things eventually
right,
to process. And that let go and let God, I think about actual manifestation. Many people think manifestation is just thinking hard enough about something and like wanting it enough and aligning with the energy of pulling it in. That's one half of it. That's the God part, right? That's the like higher power, guides, whoever you believe in, universe, like, I really want to do this thing.
right,
But then you have to take the aligned action to make it happen here in the tangible 3D world
right,
where we have to move forward. So if we're like, I'm going to get over this shit because I'm going to let go and let God and it's just going to resolve in the background. No, it's not. It's going to be there 10 years from now. It's going to pop back up. And the other metaphor that really comes to mind with this is if you think about like a second grader who runs into a room and they've just drawn a little crayon picture and they're like, hey, 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 look at what I did, look at what I did. And they're like, they want to show you the picture.
yeah,
If you ignore that child, a not a great thing to do, right? Because what's that child going to do? Now they're going to start tugging at your sleeve. Hey, 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 I want to show you this thing I did. And if you're like, no, go away, I'm busy, right? What's happening to that child? Same thing that's happening to your inner parts. If instead we go, wow, that's a really great drawing. That's so cool. What does the kid do? Yay. And then they run off.
and then they leave.
They leave. They're done. They got what they were coming for, which was that
Yeah,
moment of acknowledgement and attention. So if
yeah,
we actually do that when we're going through a trauma and there's all these riled parts of us that are like so upset and hurt and whatnot, if we go, oh, wow, that's a lot. Let me make some space for you. Let me make some space for this. Let me schedule 30 minutes out of this week to sit down and cry about it. Let me schedule some time to sit down and journal about it or talk to a friend instead of, I'm going to just let go and let God, or I'm going to shapeshift this away, or I'm going to pop it off and bury it in a shoebox in my basement and pretend it doesn't exist. Like that is bypassing.
yeah. And, you brought up such an interesting thing too about manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because one of the things that I talk about, especially when I teach rebel school, but I talk about this often in my writing and my speaking too, is, we have this model that action leads to clarity, leads to confidence, like in this
Mm,
circle. And often what I teach is that inspired, intuitive, intentional action leads to inspired, intuitive, intentional clarity, which leads to inspired, intuitive, intentional confidence.
mm-hmm.
So for just taking action just for the hell of it, and then then we're still our clarity and our confidence is still kind of muddy. It's not very clear. But when we move and operate from a space of our intuition,
Mhm.
then that healing can take place and we don't bypass things anymore because we're paying attention to what our intuition is leading us towards. And
Yes.
oftentimes that's towards embracing the fullness of ourself and our human experience so that as we move forward in the world and encounter people who are like, "Why are you doing that?" Or "That's not gonna work for you because it didn't work for me." Like, all of the things that say, "No, you can't really do that," because 'cause we're set up in a system that says, "No, you can't really do that."
Mhm.
Then we're still rooted and grounded in that intuitive movement forward so that the healing can take place,
Yep.
so that we can have this fullness of human experience because that's what we're here to do.
Yes. Yeah, and the intuitive piece is huge. Intuition and intention. Intention is literally the ingredient that changes everything. It makes it more mindful, it makes it more present. It's impossible to truly entirely bypass when we're being intentional and intuitive because our intuition understands and knows the shadow light pattern that we're in, that we're constantly going in and out of that shadow and light dance. And so when we're intentionally going, okay, well, I'm going to look at where I'm at in the dance. Where
Yeah.
is this material in my overall moving in and out of doing and being, in and out of comfort and discomfort, in and out of, taking action and sitting back to get the clarity? Like we have to move in and out of these things. We're not supposed to be 100% on all the time. We're not supposed to be productive all the time. We're not supposed to be feeling happy go lucky, over the top enthusiastic about life all the time either. Like we are meant to be in these ebbs and flows. God, can you imagine being like high energy all the time and just not having any shadow things at all? Like we our bodies would burn out in a way.
Yeah, and I think that that is so like here what I've noticed in embracing the entirety of all of my feelings,
Mhm.
they actually become much less intense.
Yep.
And I have found this really incredible harmony. So like now I can absolutely recognize joy. Like I'm like, oh dang, this is like the loveliest feeling. Like I am having the most fun right now. This is so delightful. Um and it's not as supercharged. Like it doesn't feel
Mhm.
like this like big ball of ah, right? Like
Right.
because I also have um really embraced that when I'm mad, like
Mhm.
or sad or whatever those other feelings are that we're trained make us less productive, right? Um and I'm curious what your thoughts are. You brought up productivity and I think this is such an important component of bypassing and this rule that there's only one way to be spiritual. Um I'm curious what your thoughts are about how productivity and quote unquote success play into spiritual bypassing.
Well, I just want to historically mention that a lot of our modern work ethic comes from white Protestant history. So that's really important to acknowledge that Protestant religion and our current hustle culture go hand in hand. They were co-designed. And productivity became synonymous with godliness. I don't know the exact quote. I'm not a quotes don't store in my head, but it's something, like being overproductive is close to godliness, is essentially the message that we hear. And so that has really laced itself into, well, I can't sit down and feel my feelings because I need to show that I am good and righteous and going to make it to heaven through the fruits of my labors of pushing myself into the ground and
Good works.
overwork yes, overworking myself right now so that I will get through those pearly gates. Like No, that's not. I beg to differ. I don't really think Jesus would be happy with that mentality. That's not what Jesus was about. Um, so yes, we have really created modern religion, and I want to differentiate between religion and spirituality because many people think they are the same thing. Your religion could determine some of your spiritual practice, but you do not have to have a religion to have a spiritual practice. So when religion and spirituality end up going hand in hand, that's where I really see the structure of religions creating societal structures, which
Mhm.
create the need to be productive and thus create the need to bypass. Feeling our feelings is not something that is highly recommended by anyone, any system in society.
Yeah.
So I think that there's excuse me, a lot tangled up in there. And the on the note of the right way to be spiritual, that often goes hand in hand with the religion,
Mhm.
where through various religious channels and teachings, this is the way you practice. This is the time of day or the day of the week or the method or the ritual in which you do your practice. But there are as many ways to be spiritual as there are humans.
Well, and I think that really goes to one of the disruptive things that I really like to talk about because everybody knows that, well, anyone who's this is if this is not your first episode of listening to this podcast, you know that I am Christian and pagan, right?
Yep.
Like, so anyone who's listening to this knows those things are true and that they can coexist and converge.
Yep.
And one of the things that I really love to talk about is that the church is not the building. We are the church. Like God lives within us.
Mm-hmm.
The universal flow of love. If God is love and we are made in God's image, then we are love. And
Yep.
that means that flows through us. But you cannot control a population. You cannot engage in the horror of Indian boarding schools. You cannot own human beings. You cannot commit genocide if there is not that external structure that people have to go to. So you
Yep.
effectively cut off people's capacity to connect to the divine through their own bodies. And yet, at least in my church, in the Episcopal Church, we talk often about how we are church,
Mm-hmm.
we encompass the church, that the church is not just the building, the church is all around us everywhere. And yet
Yeah.
I half the time I'm going to church in the forest, right? Like church
Yep.
is everywhere. And it's that connection to divinity that that I think has been so frankly bastardized by this exceptionalism and pull yourself up by the bootstraps and all of these
Mm-hmm.
metaphors that we have that came out of the Protestant, the push towards Protestantism and colonization.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if we approach everything from love, the world wouldn't be the way it is. If we approached everything from love, we wouldn't learn to bypass. It's anti-love, many religious structures. And I'm a druid. I also do consider myself a Christian. I was a prayer chaplain in a unity church for years and Unitarian Universalist pagan spiritual leader doing rituals and whatnot. And so we can be both. And anything that says we can't uh have our own spiritual experience that's made of our own grab bag of lived experiences is trying to bypass some other reality. And that is, when I look at a lot of like Christian nationalism, there's so much bypassing in that
Yeah.
because it's so much look over here at this other group or whatever person that's doing this bad thing while we are covering up that we do these same things behind closed doors. It's okay when we do it, but it's not okay if a brown person does it or whatever, right? Whatever racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic BS that's been built into that structure to keep it controlling. And so we have to reclaim, and I think that for Christians out there, Reclaiming your relationship with Christ is the most important thing, your relationship with Christ. And for everybody else, reclaiming your relationship with higher power, with nature, with your own body, and to be able to listen in again to the signals that are actually coming through instead of saying, oh, we don't look at that. We don't go there. I love I've had so many conversations with people lately in my line of work where talking about some of the more uncomfortable emotions like shame, fear, and disappointment, I'll hear phrases like, "Oh, well, I just don't do shame. I just don't do disappointment. No, I just don't do fear." And it's literally like, no, I just push it away because guess what? 100% of people experience shame, fear, and disappointment. Like
Yeah,
all of us do. So there is no, yeah, I just don't do that. Yes, you will. It'll be there nagging. It's going to be that little
yeah.
second grader tugging at your sleeve until you give in. And then you're going to be a lot more tired and drained than if you had just looked immediately and said, "Oh, hi, there you are." You were talking
It
about
takes so much more energy to avoid shit.
it does. And you were talking about that since you've leaned into just kind of experiencing your emotions, they don't feel as intense. And what's interesting about that is that that is us expanding our window of tolerance. A window of tolerance is something that I teach in my, psychology teachings. And it's essentially when we're out of our window of tolerance, we feel depressed or we feel anxious. We're either hijacked and we're like really activated, which is above our window, or we are overwhelmed, exhausted, depleted, drained because we just have too much on our plate and we get depressed. So we're trying to find our sweet spot, our window of tolerance where our system can hold whatever is coming in. And of course, we're going to go up into anxiety or depression. 100% of people do that. But what we're trying to do in our window of tolerance is expand it from 0 to -1 and +1 to 0 to -10 and +10. The more we allow ourselves and we accept the quote unquote negative side of the number line
Right.
and just are like, yep, this is part of the experience, the more we can ride that high up to the other end of the number line where it's like, yeah, you know what? I accepted that deep pit of sorrow that I was in and I felt it and I cried my heart out and my eyes were so bloodshot and puffy and I had a headache from crying. And then the next day, I went all the way to the +10 of joy and I had this wonderful experience and I was in tune with nature and my body just felt so light. Yeah, that's possible for us when we're allowing ourselves to experience those uncomfortable things. When we
Right.
do not allow ourselves to experience those uncomfortable things and we push them away, we're just as likely to push away those positive things because our system, that window of tolerance, kind of sees extreme emotions of quote unquote good and bad the same way. So we have to slowly expand that window so we can feel more feelings, whether we quote like them or not, because they'll ease up when we feel them.
Well, and I really think that when we do that, it also expands our capacity to deal with what's happening in the world, right?
Hmm.
I was having a conversation. Um, so as we're recording this, this is July 7th, 2025. And I was having a conversation with someone about the prison camp, the concentration camp that's been built in the Florida Everglades,
Hmm.
and that this is a continuation of a pattern of just completely decimating brown bodies,
Yep.
right? And this started the minute people from Europe came over to this continent. And it is so people don't are not even looking at it. Like there is very little, I should say, moral outrage about what is happening. The only protests that are taking place are because the indigenous people from that land don't want the Everglades destroyed, right?
Right.
So it is this continual component of what you were just talking about. I think is so important, like this idea of expanding that window of tolerance actually allows us to engage with the atrocities that are happening right now
Yep.
without feeling exhausted,
Yep.
because we're not avoiding the emotions that are being stirred up within us. And I think particularly for white people, it is really hard to say once again, oh, well, I guess I have to face this, right? I have to own that I mean, someone actually posted about it that Ann Coulter said we should have gotten rid of all the Indians years ago.
Why?
Because and that is
What?
absolutely part of, you know, that has always been part of policy in the United States of
Yep.
America.
Colonization.
Eliminate the Indian, right? And so, and we do that through blood quantum and reservations and all these other things, right? And
Right.
these concentration camp in Florida is the same thing. And I'm going to make my point now. So, so there are so many people in this world who are actually connecting to their spiritual center. They're connecting to some sort of congruence and realizing that their soul, in some instances it needs nurturing, in some instances on fire and they're ready to go. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, as we tease apart this idea of hustle culture and religion, and this idea, and there is a hustle in the spirituality community
Oh
too.
my God, yes.
Like, what do you think would happen if we allowed ourselves to truly connect to how spirituality shows up in our lives so that we're not so exhausted when we need to recognize what is happening in this country?
Oh, that's a big question.
You know?
I think that what comes up for me is just
Mm,
the need to soften into the lived experience
yeah,
because our spiritual experience happens here in our body. It happens in living. And I think going back to the idea that love is truly the highest form of it is God, it is the universe, it is whatever, your highest sense of this existence is.
yeah.
How do you experience love in your body, in your day-to-day life? What do you love? Who do you love? Can you love everyone? I hold the wisdom of unconditional love, and I understand that most people don't. But that is something, where can you start to tune into unconditional love?
Mhm.
Because we, the only counterbalance to the atrocity in the world right now is love.
Yeah.
I talk to so many people who don't know what to do right now in the world because they're seeing so many horrors. They're seeing concentration camps open up and people being snatched off streets and all of these things. And if you're not able to anchor in to that higher love of humanity and the planet, you're going to easily and very quickly give up facing and what's going on, and you're going to be depressed. So how do you bring in more energy of love and tune in? How do you connect with Earth herself?
Mhm.
That's spiritual practice number one. It does not have to be precious. It doesn't have to be constant ritual. You've got 18,000 crystals and, a whole altar set up and all of that. It's just you. It can be you and your heart
Yeah.
and going and finding a little spider, a little jumping spider in the yard and loving them. Like that is, it was such a big question. I don't know if I fully answered it, but that's what's coming through is like we need to just soften into love in our daily experience more to bring in the capacity to confront what is not loving, what
Yeah.
is not actually spiritual. Because if it's not love, it's not really spiritual. It's make pretend, maybe. It's a game, it's a performance, but it's if it's not rooted in love of yourself and all beings, it's not really, truly a spiritual connection because spirituality lets us know our soul is connected to
Yeah.
something far greater than us, ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Before we wrap up, I just want to mention, because I forgot to mention this last time, you and I are up to some spiritual shenanigans.
we are.
And you and well, I want you to talk about our spiritual shenanigans and the events that we're doing through the rest of the year together.
Yes. So we are co-hosting a Lunasa, a fall equinox, the Samhain ritual, and a winter solstice ritual together. And these are the least precious things you're ever going to have been to because I've been practicing Wheel of the Year rituals now for almost 20 years myself. I
Mhm.
have been leading them for well over 10 years. So I could like do them in my sleep, and I've done the guidebooks and the, the 5 to 50 steps where each step we have an object and we do this and we do that. These are going to just be showing up in the fun, in the energy of the moment of these cosmic and seasonal portals. So we're pulling together the lunar energy, we're pulling together the seasonal energy, we're pulling together the symbolism, and we're just showing up with our experience as spiritual leaders and guides, and seeing what needs to come through based on who is in the room. So there's not any like, you have to prepare for this. You just show up with you in a notebook and see what kind of comes through, what channels through Dr. Bird and I, what guides have to say, what the cards have to say. So we'll be bringing some tools. We'll be doing some card reading, of the energy of the moment, and some collective reads. We'll be doing some guided meditations and visualizations and activations and all of those things. But it's really just about being in the energy, in the flow of the moment, of this, of the actual lived, breathed experience of love in the moment. So it is about us connecting in with ourselves and not externalizing it into another figure or into any other objects, just really having our experience.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I think it's going to allow for a presence. Like it's going to allow for everyone who joins us to be present just with where they're at exactly at that moment. So I'm really excited.
Yes.
So for those of you who want more information, you can go to my website and just click on the Work With Me tab, and there will be a link to the spiritual shenanigans. And where can people find you, my darling?
Yeah, so livinglunas.com or safrianna.com are the best ways to get in touch with me. If you do want to go check out that page, livinglunas.com/seasonal, and you can read up all about our rituals. But yeah, those are the two places to connect with me. And I'm always here. I'm always talking and sharing and teaching and growing. And so if there's something you want to learn about from me, like don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you too. And good luck, everyone, tuning into your higher spiritual selves. I'm cheering you on.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.